Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. The drink drive limit, voting for the Chief Minister, and the UK's EU referendum were just some of the topics up for discussion this week. Here's Stu Peters with more details.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Would you support the vote for the next Chief Minister to be restricted to politicians who are publicly elected? And MHK has been given the green light to bring forward proposals to change the way that the Chief Minister is elected. Under the current system, all Tynwald members take part in the vote. But Michael MHK Alfred Cannon wants to see that vote restricted to members of the House of Keys only, with the exclusion of the Legislative Council. Do you agree with him? Should the vote be restricted only to members of the House of Keys? Or since the Legislative Council is elected by Keys members, should they have a say on who should lead the Manx government too? What about the idea of a publicly elected Chief Minister? Is that something that you'd like to see? Let's see what John Dog makes of this. Fast am I, John?
Cannon was on there about, he was saying maybe a public vote. Now, that's ridiculous. You know, in the Isle of Man, we got flat earthers, we got people who think Clarkson should have been able to keep the footpath around his house and see, well, where's he now? And people can't say Mackle. We got all these sorts of idiots. I'm probably one of them as well. And I've played football for years. You got a captain picks a team, you know, or a committee. If you put it out to the vote, you'd end up with a whole load of people. The Chief Minister could be voted in by the public, and the people who are voted in don't want to work under him.
I see.
You understand my logic?
Yeah, well, to an extent, John, yes, there's usually some logic there. I don't know anything about football, so how does a captain get elected to a football team?
I think people get together and they choose a captain.
Right.
And it's a team that picks a captain.
Is it?
And yeah, well, most of the I've been involved in.
Okay.
And in most cases, the captain, maybe the vice captain, maybe a couple of people pick the team.
Yeah.
But I've been in football clubs, and then it decided there was one or two complaints, so the committee picked the team, and it was a different team to what the captain wanted. Well, he's got to go out and run them.
So you think that if it was a public election, it'd be too much of a beauty contest, or am I putting words into your mouth?
Well, as I say, we got all sorts of canons here who'd be trying to say who should be, the Chief Minister. So that whether the Legislative Council should be voting, I think personally, they both have been originally voted in, and then they're voted in eventually, and I say that, eventually they get voted in by Tynwald themselves.
Yeah.
After about 40 votes, they get voted on by them. So they're people that they thought were good enough to do the job. So why they can't pick the Chief Minister? Because the Chief Minister is going to be telling them what to do as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's just in life. I know that if somebody's going to be telling me what to do, I'd like to have had some say in some respects about how it is, rather than a complete, people from the other side of the fence picking who's going to tell you what to do.
Right. Okay. Interesting. All right. Thank you, John. Let's have a look. Simon's been on. He says, certainly right that any say in the matter should be taken away from MLCs. All right. Okay. So this disagrees with John Dog. Chris Thomas, MHK, has called for candidates for the Chief Minister's role to publish their manifestos to the public in advance. Yeah, what do you think about that? Because that can backfire. I think John Shimmin did that last time and said that if he was elected, he was going to stand for Chief Minister. And a lot of people thought that he was getting a bit too big for his boots. Only MHKs, says Simon, can get together to form a government, so it's probably best that they choose the Chief Minister. Hopefully, those with a progressive outlook can prevent a really regressive individual from achieving the highest office. Some comments from you. I'd go even further and limit voting in Tynwald to just Keys members while still allowing Legco members to take part in debates. Interesting. I can't disagree with Mr Cannon's proposal, but I think Legco should be no more than an unpaid consultation chamber, like the old aldermanic bench that the Corp used to have, says Alan. Okay. Robin Peel called. The Keys and Legco should vote together for Chief Minister, he says. Robin Port St Mary. Agree with Alf. Candidates for the Keys should state in their manifestos if they want to be Chief Minister, so we get a better choice. Okay. At one time, the person who said that the earth was not flat was regarded as an idiot, says David H. Well, yeah, these things go in cycles, don't they, David? And let's go to the lines. Eddie's on. Hello, Eddie.
I think it should just be the elected members.
MHKs only?
Yes, because at the present time, with the Chief Minister holding 12 votes,
Yeah.
anybody who gets elected for the MLCs must have his support.
Gotcha. Okay.
And basically, we've gone and lost good MLCs who voted against the government,
Right.
and were voted out at the next time.
Yes.
Because with him holding 12 votes, you've got to have 14 to be elected.
Right. So you think that the system is fairly flawed the way it is then?
Yeah, of course it is.
There's a bit too much horse trading going on.
Yeah, well, you take the Treasury. At the present time, I'm not sure of my facts, but I think the only elected member is Mr. Tier.
Right.
I think the rest are all MLCs. Now, surely this is wrong, to have more members, unelected members,
Yeah.
and a major thing like that. Now, I could be wrong. There might be another elected member on with him, but I'm sure, I think it's only him. Who was actually elected by the public.
I can't correct you because I've not got my list here. It's down in the office, but I do have a list of these things. I think that what Alf Cannon was saying is that actually he'd like to see a limitation to what MLCs are able to do. Not just this, I get the impression. I mean, what do you think that it's all right for MLCs to be members of departments, or would you just return it to being a sort of a star chamber, a revising chamber?
I think it should be as it was originally. They were there to oversee legislation. If they saw that it was bad legislation, then they sent it back to the Keys to have another look.
Gotcha.
I mean, they couldn't vote on it, but they could send it back and say, look, you've got this point and that point wrong. Have a look at it again.
So you think it's wrong that they're part of executive government?
Yeah, well, they're not elected, are they?
No.
It's all right saying the MHKs elect them, but us, the public, and they affect our lives, then to me, they must be elected by us, the people.
Gotcha.
If they're not elected by us, then how can they have a right to be on the Treasury and say your income tax goes up or your income tax goes down?
Yeah, sure.
Whichever way it is. I mean, it's affecting everybody's life.
Yeah, some good points there, Eddie. Thank you very much for that. Some more text and emails. Yes, the All Boys Club MLC should not have a vote on the election of Chief Minister, according to Peter. Captain of the footy team is never the fat kid with glasses, says Chris22. Well, is it not? I don't know. You say I don't follow football, so I don't know. If the Chief Minister was publicly elected, he'd be an all-powerful president and think he was God, striding around the globe like Putin. No thanks, says John. Do you think? The Isle of Man Chief Minister would stride the globe. Bob called Legislative Council shouldn't have a say, really. The Chief Minister should be picked by the House of Keys. John Dogg said that they voted him by the public in the first place, but that's not always the case. The President of Tynwald was voted out by the people and came back in through the back door. There are others who were in Legislative Council for 20 years without ever getting a vote from the public, or at least for the majority of that time. They should have no say in who is Chief Minister. Given some of the idiots that we have in the Keys at the moment, you should be able to use MLCs, says Derek. Interesting. Okay, I think most people think not, Derek, but it's interesting that you think that we should be able to use MLCs. Stu, if the appointment of the Chief Minister is to be precluded from members of the Legislative Council, participation, should not this protocol also apply to the appointment of the President of Tynwald? At the present moment of time, we have a President of Tynwald not elected by the public, who incidentally lost a seat as an MHK, but managed to get herself on the Legislative Council and then elevated to the position of President. Democracy at its best, haha. Perhaps the election involved in this process should have some public input. And that's from Chris Q. Interesting thought. Thank you, Chris. Alf Cannon's spot on, and Eddie, who phoned in, is right on the money. That's from Scale in Port St Mary. If we had direct democracy, we could all have a vote and a Tynwald pension from S. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Stu, does the Bishop get a vote? That would be wrong. I don't even know why he sits in the Keys, says Robin Port St Mary. Well, he doesn't. He sits in Legco, and yes, he's got a vote. Alf Cannon is 100% right, says Steph. Good stuff, thank you.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
If the British Crown dependencies were given a say in the European Union referendum, which way would you vote? Island homeowner John Rhys-Davies petitioned the UK government saying that islanders should have a say in what he's described as one of the most important and constitutionally significant events in recent times. And it seems there's been a bit of a breakthrough on that front. The UK government will respond to the petition if it attracts 10,000 signatures. It will be considered for a Westminster debate if it receives 100,000. Meanwhile, as we heard on the news yesterday, a red card system to stop unwanted EU laws is among draft reforms the Prime Minister secured from Brussels, according to 10 Downing Street. Under the system proposed, legislation would be dropped or amended if more than half of the EU's national parliaments decided to block it. And an EU renegotiation package has been unveiled by European Council President Donald Tusk today. And today the UK Prime Minister has insisted he's made real progress in renegotiating the UK's relationship with the EU. David Cameron says he's achieved a number of things in the document which has just been published. But which way would you vote if you were given the chance? Do you support the calls for the UK to remain a member of the European Union? Or would you like to see those ties and the island ties as a result broken? Let's join the EU in our own right like Gibraltar, says one of our contributors. Most people, including myself, have no idea of the pros or cons of staying in or leaving the EU. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much part of that group as well. Let's go to the lines. We've got Tim on. Hello, Tim.
Well, I have to say, I thought that David Cameron was going to bring some white rabbit out of his hat. I thought there was a fantastic bit of politicking. We're going to call a referendum. Look, EU, it's got to change. We need sovereignty, we need a better business relationship, etc., etc. But I fear everything that's happening is, as that memorable phrase, pretty thin gruel.
Yeah.
I can't remember that Rees-Mogg chap said that in Parliament. And I think it's all a fudge.
Yeah. So it's just a case of Cameron saying to people, you're going to have a choice about this, but actually nobody's really got much of a choice anyway, and it's a choice between two evils. Is that your view on it?
No, I don't think it's a choice of two evils. I think there are dangers in both, and concerns with both options.
Yeah.
However, I think that the yellow card system that's been proposed, the 55% red card system, is a fudge. It's already been there. I think the business about the emergency brake has to be signed up by all 27 member states. That's also been there already, so it's not like there's a new plan.
OK, so, that was Tim, who thinks that it's all a bit of a fudge, pulling rabbits out of the hat. I don't know if you've got a view about that or not. Signatures online to Westminster now, over 500 for democracy's sake. They need to keep coming, says Richard. Yeah, 500, but I think we need 10,000, really, for them to start taking it seriously. So is that likely? We should definitely get a vote. It's going to affect all of us. We're not invisible and we do exist. Westminster, please don't ignore us, but do enough people care over here, and are they politically aware enough? I don't know is the answer to that. Let's get out of Europe and move to the Caribbean instead. Much nicer weather. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, just tow the island somewhere warmer. Mike called. This has opened up a good point. If the powers that be decide that we can have a vote in this referendum, does that mean that we'll have a vote on every other issue which may affect the Isle of Man in future? Good question. It would be disingenuous to give us a vote on this, but not on other issues that will impact on us directly in future, things like fishing rights. That's a very good point, actually, yeah. As trade is increasingly becoming operated in a world market, the EU will become less important for trade. And even now, the Isle of Man can export cheese, say, to the USA with no problem. So I think that we in the UK should leave the EU, as we can still cooperate with other countries with defence and other matters without being locked into EU regulations. Yes, but in my experience, I think that quite often, even though we might not legally be required to take on EU regulations, it is often seen to be best practice. And our government tends to go along with these things because I suppose the feeling is that at some point in the future it's likely to become legislation anyway, and if everybody else decides that it's best practice, then we might as well adopt it. So I don't know if that would actually make a lot of difference, to be honest. But good points. Out, says John in Ramsey, making our own laws and controlling our own borders. OK. Half the island's voting population doesn't even bother with elections here, never mind anything so remote as the EU, says Mick. Yeah, I suppose that's a concern about this. We're supposed to be talking about how any vote on the EU will have, the impact of any vote on the EU will have on the Isle of Man because of its association with the UK. We don't need to debate what it'll mean for England. We're interested in what it means for the Isle of Man directly. OK, fine. Well, tell us what you think. Don't agree with the caller who says that we can vote them out of Tynwald if we don't agree with what they do. We have less say than the UK. Our MHKs are all independents, rather like the EU Council now. Stu, can someone explain the meaning of Protocol 3, which our politicians often refer to as the guiding factor from the EU over us? I understand it tells us what we must do, but we get nothing out of it, says Norman. I couldn't give you a proper legal definition, but it is our right to trade within Europe through the UK as our sponsoring authority. And I suppose that there are conditions to that as well, things that we have to do in return. John called, as far as I'm aware, the Isle of Man does pay into the EU. I think it's 2% of the VAT, which is paid to the UK. Ah, right. It's down to Protocol 3. We're a net contributor, but we get nothing back apart from open trade links. Right then.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should there be more compulsory checks on older drivers to make sure that they're still fit to be behind the wheel? Apparently most older drivers support tougher rules on motorists who are over 70. 3 in 5 think that they should retake the driving test every 5 years, while nearly 4 in 5 back regular eyesight checks. The number of drivers over the age of 70 is set to double over the next 20 years. Peter Roger from the Institute of Advanced Motorists says that their research shows older motorists accept that safety comes first. So what do you think about this? Should there be more testing for drivers when they reach a certain age? Or would that be discriminatory? Should there be more regular testing for drivers of all ages? How about maybe after a moving traffic offence? Should people be retested then? In a few comments on this already. Stu, maybe also include a test for parents who buy their own children high-performance vehicles not long after they've passed the driving test. Stupidity is at its best, says Pete. I don't know. I'd quite like to see some research into that, about whether or not younger drivers are safer in reasonably high-powered vehicles compared to small, slow things. Robin Peel says, I agree that people of a certain age should be retested, but I also think that young people who've been involved in more than one accident or a serious accident should be made to retake their test. My wife drives at around 40 miles an hour on the roads, which is a reasonable speed, but she's harassed by younger drivers who get very close to a bumper and try to harass you into driving faster, which isn't right either. OK. Stu, it's not the older driver that's the problem, but the young crackpots that have just passed the driving test, says Bert. Stu, I disagree with older drivers being retested. Most are experienced and better drivers than most younger drivers. I think also that in the UK it would be regarded as age discrimination. How would we check drivers during TT fortnight that they're still qualified? Well, I suppose, see if they've got a licence or not. The individual should decide when they should cease. Also, tests would cost the individual. Yeah, they would, but, I just think it's one of those things that if you want to keep your driving licence, I'd be quite prepared to be tested once a year or, every 5 years or whatever it is. I think it would make the road safer for all if drivers are tested when reaching the age of 65 and then every 5 years thereafter. If a driver fails, they, and if necessary the spouse, should be offered a free bus pass. I'm 60 and I fully admit that my reactions and judgment while driving are nowhere near as good as they were. And driving at night is problematic, even though I got night driving glasses from an optician. Unfortunately, that's something that the majority of drivers will experience as they get older, says James in Ramsey. Thank you, James. A couple of years ago, I put myself through the over 60s drive test. It's very good. It shows which things you need to look at. They don't stop you driving unless you're really dangerous, but it gives you peace of mind that you're still doing the right things. It costs about 30 quid, and it was through the Institute of Advanced Motorists, but it wasn't an advanced course, just a check. That sounds like a good idea. It gives you peace of mind. But I don't think people should blame older drivers for all the accidents on the roads and try and stop them from driving. No, they're not responsible for all the accidents, of course not. But I think they are an increasingly problem area, and as we heard earlier on, the over 70s, there are going to be far more of them driving than there ever have been before. The young ones are in accidents all the time and they're just told off or fined, then carry on driving. I had quite a few hairy moments on the mountain with them, and van drivers can be bad. They just pull out wherever and carry on because they're doing a job and just want to get on with it. Okay, some good points there, but I didn't know that the IAM did a sort of a check, but that is a good idea. Reactions get slower as you get older, so yes, fitness assessment should be introduced. As with boy races, it's usually easier to tell who's driving at 15 miles an hour as well, which is equally dangerous, says Nick. Yeah, I agree with that, Nick. That's my point of view on that one. These 35-mile-an-hour merchants have never had an accident but seen hundreds, says John Dog. Well, yeah, that comment's been made a few times, and I think actually there's a lot of truth in it. I'm over 83. I can easily look over my shoulder and tie my shoelaces. Good man or good lady. Excellent. I must admit, I've had trouble with shoelaces. But that's because I'm fat, not because I'm old. This is from Rosie, who says, I would suggest that all drivers should have to retake their test every 5 or 10 years. I think there would be an interesting result for some. It should be compulsory for all drivers to have a free driving lesson every 5 years, whatever their age, and if the instructor thinks that they need more lessons, they should have to have them. Also compulsory for doctors to report conditions to the DVLA or whichever department which might cause problems. It isn't happening at the moment, says Phil. Thank you, Phil. Brian Corley says, I'm 73 and recently, a couple of months ago, I had a stroke while I was a passenger in a car. I thought to myself, what would have happened if I'd been driving at the time, because I had my own car. So as soon as I got out of the hospital, I got rid of the car. I do think there should be compulsory testing, especially when it comes to health issues. Thank you, Brian. Stuart, I see no problem with slow drivers. I just wish that they'd look in the mirrors more often, and when they see a long stream of traffic behind them, pull over and let them pass like the tractors and other slow-moving traffic does, says Steve. Tractors and things, they never pull over. They drive for about 1,000 miles before they're aware that they've got half of the Isle of Man following them. I'm 65 this year and I'm nowhere near as good a driver as I was at, say, 21. I've done an advanced driving course, racing course, and competed on 2 and 4 wheels, but drivers are not taught how to drive, merely how to pass a test. I think that's always been the case, and you're right. No one's taught them how to avoid skids and how to get out of them. The police do a commentary as they drive on everything that they're doing. Try it for an hour, it's hard, says Chris22. It is difficult, very difficult. Let's go to the lines. We've got John on who wants to have a word about this. Hello, John.
What I'd like to say is there's different standards in all ages, in your 20s, 30, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I've lived on the island 26 years this year.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with motorways. I remember the Preston bypass being opened.
The M6, yeah.
And my job entailed driving all up and down. So I'm absolutely comfortable with motorways. So you could get somebody from here, 20, 30, go across, drive on a motorway. It'd be a complete pain.
Yeah.
They haven't had the advocate of it. And also, back to the door mirrors and wing mirrors, I've always reversed with door mirrors and wing mirrors, and I can still turn my head.
Right.
And I've no problem at all I'll be 67 in March, and I've no problem at all driving on the continent. And like 4 years ago, I drove in the centre of London to pick a bike up I'd bought from somebody on eBay.
Yeah.
Now, it was when the Olympics were on, and a lot of roads closed, and I used sat-nav. Now, if you're dithering about, that can be a danger. But with the advent of sat-nav, it took me straight to the house. I could select that I didn't want to pay tolls, so I didn't have to pay any congestion charge.
Yeah.
Now, things like that aid people. And you can dither when you're old, you can dither when you're young. And I've no problem with taking the test, but I don't think there's a level playing field.
Okay, all right, fair dues. Thank you very much for your call, John. I'm 66. One thing that comes to mind is that I drive a 2.8 litre V6 motor. My insurance fully comp with the wife on it. She's 60, is only £167. Surely that says something about our driving. Insurance companies don't seem to see us as a problem. Try being 30 and get the insurance as low as that for your high insurance group car. Fair comment.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Our proposed new restrictions on smoking in cars and tobacco displays to be welcomed. New anti-smoking regulations are set to go before Tynwald this month. If approved, they'll ban smoking in cars when a child under 16 years of age is present, and there'll be further restrictions on tobacco advertising and shop displays. The regulations have recently been the subject of a public consultation. Are the new restrictions a good idea, do you think? Is it important that the Isle of Man keeps pace with the restrictions further afield in relation to smoking, or are the restrictions likely to prove unenforceable? It's very sad that people even need a law to stop them from poisoning kids by smoking near them in an enclosed space. Well, I've mentioned this before, and I'm not particularly proud of it, but I mean, when I had small children and was a smoker, I never used to think twice about smoking in the car. I used to open the driver's side window and think that all the smoke was going out of my window and it wasn't getting to the kids. But there was a very good advert recently about that shows that, you know, even though you can't see the smoke, then the effects of it are still there. And, you know, had that been around 30 years ago, I might have taken a bit more notice of it, I think. Let's go to the lines. We've got Eddie on. Hello, Eddie.
I don't smoke, but I think it's time everybody learned the facts about things. Now, you will know this. You'll know a place called Oxford Road.
Yes, in Manchester.
Right. Well, last week, as early as last week on the television, it actually stated that the pollution that was a test taken on Oxford Road in Manchester exceeded the EU limits by far.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they are attributing it to over 200,000 early deaths per year. Right.
Well, I mean, the thing about this, Eddie, is that it's a bit like all politics seem to me, and I realise I'm getting cynical with age, but it seems that politicians only go after the easy targets.
Well, this is exactly what I'm trying to get at, is the fact that nobody has ever been done in a law court for polluting by passive smoking.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas they are saying that Manchester is actually breaking the EU rules, and it could be done for it.
Right.
Right. Now that is a known fact. It's 2,000 times worse than passive smoking, seemingly.
Yeah.
Right.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
We're in this world of a level playing field, and they're wanting to ban smoking.
Yeah.
Well, let's all of a sudden say let's have the same rules for them then.
Yeah.
You can't do it, can you?
No, you can't, and that's the trouble. So politicians will go after the easy target. So
what they want to do then is just, instead of all these people who are getting a nice wage out of all these little departments that they're in, instead of bringing out these laws, leave the law as it is, because it's not the one that's doing the damage. I think I said once before on your programme that you could be sat in a car smoking and then get outside to even worse pollution. You know, which is a fact.
All right, good points there, Eddie. Thank you very much indeed. It's certainly worth thinking about that. Let's go to St John's and have a word with Diane. Hello, Diane.
I heard most of what that gentleman was saying. I agree with him. I mean, I find it just absolutely ridiculous. If the child is with a smoking family, it's spending 23 and a half hours in a house where people smoke and half an hour in a car. You know, I mean, Mr. Quayle would do better if he spent his time trying to stop the cereals, including the wheat, being sprayed from Roundup just before the harvest.
Yeah.
And so we are consuming, well, I'm not now, I stopped buying it, was it called glyphosate?
I don't know, there are all sorts of horrible ingredients in a lot of these things, aren't there?
And this is just before harvest, so I now buy organic bread.
Right, good for you.
You know, without all the spraying that's going on, and we've got up above as well, and to ban smoking in cars is just absolutely, I find it just absolutely ridiculous. They want something better to do.
Okay. That's Diane, put the world to rights. Is Howard Quayle for real? He's basically said he's hoping law-abiding people will conform to these new smoking in vehicle laws, but those that offend will be charged. I see lots of people on mobile phones while driving, many of the same culprits. Do we ever hear of police charging them? No, we don't. Well, we sometimes do, yeah. Police numbers are dropping, and this government keep bringing in more and more laws, but they can't enforce them. I had to ring Douglas Police Station last week, and I tried 3 times and got no answer. I can't help but laugh at the way that this island is failing us. That from Zoe. Anybody smoking inside a house where there are other people who don't smoke, like a partner or children, is showing selfish behaviour. Police can't even police mobile phone use in cars. How are they going to police smoking in them, says somebody else. Stu, have you ever heard of anybody getting done for smoking in a works van? No, I haven't, and to be honest, I hope I don't either. I always thought that was ridiculous, to be honest. If you're in a works van, you're not allowed to smoke in it, whether you're in it alone or not, whether it's if you're a sole trader, you can't smoke in a works van. It's a crazy law, that one, I thought. Stu, if there was no proof that smoking kills, how did the government get away with the smoking kills warning on cigarettes? They couldn't. Deliberately putting your children at risk, whatever that may be, is beyond my comprehension. It happens. I regularly see women smoking in the cars with youngsters in the back. Unbelievable, says Susie. Okay. Stu, feel that Mr. Quayle is getting a bit of a raw deal from some of your listeners. He's trying to be reasonable in his behaviour. If he didn't respond as he has, he'd be condemned. The issues with industrial pollution have to be dealt with separately. He's right to say that law-abiding citizens will listen and obey, and it's the idiots who have no regard for anybody else who need to be pulled up. It's a shame that we have to do it, but the children and the vulnerable need protection.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should proposals to lower the drink-drive limit be seriously considered? An MHK from the west of the island says he's concerned that moves to drop the legal drink-drive limit from 80 to 50 micrograms would prove damaging to businesses in his constituency and indeed elsewhere in more rural parts of the island. Geoffrey Boot, Glenfaber MHK, made his points in a question to the Home Affairs Minister, Juan Watterson, in the House of Keys. But a prominent advocate says lowering the island's drink-drive limit would ultimately reduce road deaths. Chiva Arthurs is urging the public to remember why the legislation is being considered. Is the lowering of the drink-drive limit a good idea, or would lowering it to 50 milligrams be too extreme? I thought it was micrograms, but I've just checked, and that's for breath samples, so I'm quite happy to correct myself. Stu, it's a total nanny state nonsense from too many pen pushers with nothing useful to do. Oh, come on, get down off the fence on this. It won't stop the idiots who drive after a complete skinful. How many deaths have been caused by drivers between 50 and 80 milligrams in the Isle of Man? A total ban on all mobile phones while driving, including hands-free, would be far more effective for road safety, says John. Kev says, what concerns me is this focus on businesses. If the drink-drive limit's reduced, surely it's more important that accidents and deaths are reduced. So I've spoken to a number of people who are happy enough to go out for a drink or a meal and stopping after one drink. However, if they're going to be over the limit with just one drink, they might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb and will have 2 or 3 drinks. I think lowering the limit will make it worse, not better for drink driving. And John's being on, he says, if this or any other government was in the least bit interested in road safety, which they aren't, how can you say that, John? They would impose a national speed limit and make vehicles capable of very silly speed, vehicles capable of very silly speeds off the road. Well, I'm all right, you see, because mine's electronically limited to 155, so mine's safe. I suspect that this is another case of passing a law that is politically correct. Okie doke. TV show Mythbusters did an experiment, drink driving against driving while using your mobile phone. Amazingly, the drunk drivers were proved safer than the phone users, and still every day I pass about 10 drivers driving and using mobile phones. They never seem to get done. Let's go to the lines. We've got Jill on. Hello, Jill.
With regards to the drink driving, if people are going to drink drive, it doesn't matter what the limit is.
Right, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I know it's a cynical point of view, but that's it.
Yeah.
If they're going to drink drive.
And I mean, do you think that there is a safe amount that you can have 1 or 2 drinks and still be safe behind the wheel, or do you think that you can't have any?
I don't say yes because my children would remind me of a time many years ago. No, I think if you have one, I mean, I know my son now, he'll have a glass of wine with his meal and then that's it.
Yeah.
He'll have Coke or something for the rest of the evening.
Well, and I think the younger people, the younger generation, are a lot more careful about this kind of thing than my generation, because if I'm out with my kids and I have a pint of beer with a meal or whatever, they're aghast, and it's like, you're going to be driving after that? Well, yeah, I'm just having 1 pint. You can't drive after you've had a pint of beer. Well, yes, I can.
It's the way we were brought up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, I think.
You know, you went to a party and you came out and you got in your car and drove home.
Yeah, and just you were just a bit more careful about it because you knew that you might get done.
Yes, I mean, there was one evening when I followed a police car for I don't know how many miles.
Yeah.
And he was doing just under 30, and I thought, I know what you're trying to do.
You were not going to overtake him for anything, yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much, Jill. Some more comments. Stu, if I'm driving, I won't have a drink, and if I'm going for a drink, I won't drive. Having said that, surely to reduce the amount of drink drivers, the level should be increased, not reduced. Oh, I see. My opinion, if you want to drive, don't drink, and remember the morning after. You can still be over the limit. That's from Ian. There's nothing more draconian than death. Yeah, okay. If the person killed by a drunk driver is somebody that you love, life will never be the same again. Maybe some people can drink and drive, but if so, how do we know which ones they are? Against the life-changing nightmare of deaths caused by drinking drivers, what's the small price of drinking something non-alcoholic? Do we really need alcohol to have fun? Buy a Coke or a fruit juice and to hell with the calories. One drink can be too many as it means you give in easier to the next, says Helen. Okay. Stu, just because a person thinks they're safe to drive doesn't mean that they are. Even with 1 drink, your judgment can be impaired, says Dave. Leave the limit where it is. Most people stick to their 1 drink, also knowing the consequences. The majority of people convicted are well over these limits. Anyway, so there'll always be people who either comply or abuse it regardless. Not so easy when you live in a country with very little public transport, says Pete. This government always seems to want to adopt off-island legislation, a bit like sheep following a Judas goat, says Peter. I'm pretty sure that it's people who've had a proper skinful who are the problem. Those who limit themselves to a couple of pints or glasses of wine are not. The idea to reduce the present limit is the nanny state gone completely bonkers. There'll always be mad young drivers who take the chance of driving, often badly under the influence of drugs and or drink. Penalising the sensible majority would be a silly proposal. Most accidents involve sober drivers. This plan will have no effect on them and their bad driving at all, says Mick. This from Gary. The only reason to reduce the drink driving level would be if there are a large number of people involved in incidents between the existing level and the new proposed level. I've not heard any figures released which indicate that there is a problem with a lot of accidents between the two levels. If you force people to drink at home, this is a ticking time bomb for the health service. It starts with a glass each evening, 6 months on it's 2 glasses a night, 2 years on, maybe half a bottle and so on. The licensed trade is already struggling in rural areas to further discourage people from going out for a meal and enjoying a drink with their meal. Not everyone has a partner to be designated driver. If you are in a rural area trying to get a taxi to come and pick you up late in the evening, no chance. They're not going to travel out for a 3-mile fare. They just won't come out. The last bus is at 6. If I walk home the 3 miles, I pass one street light. There are many incidents of people suffering from serious injury or even death from walking on dark roads. Also, a reduction will damage tourism on the island. When on holiday, you want to go and enjoy yourself within reason. Final thought, I like to go to my local pub 3 times a week for a couple of pints. If this comes in, I'll be penalised for being a law-abiding citizen and just stay at home instead. Leave well alone. Thank you very much. Some good points there. Andy says, I'm a serving police officer in Scotland. Oh, good. Driving offence is not my type of policing, but from the stats that I'm seeing, there's been a significant reduction in people being caught. When this was introduced in Scotland, the reduction in the limit, it caused mass debate. The psychological factor kicked in. Can I even have one drink, even with a meal? And a lot of people have simply stopped doing it just to be safe. I even see people calculating how much alcohol they're consuming in order for them to be safe to drive the next day. Yes, this is having an impact on pubs, but it'll save lives.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Can the Isle of Man rescue its hotel sector from a slow spiral of decay? The Department of Economic Development thinks so after a report from consultants. Hotel Solutions, a group from the UK, compiled a document which found the island relies too heavily on summer season trade. Our hotels are suffering underinvestment and government aid schemes are too bureaucratic to help. What opportunities are there for hoteliers in the Isle of Man, realistically? Is there scope for more development, or are there just not the numbers of visitors to make that viable? Is there scope to boost tourism in the Isle of Man, or is that something relegated to days gone by? Let's go to the lines and talk to somebody who's at the sharp end of this. Michael from the Welbeck. Hello, Michael.
Well, Mr. Keeling's a very nice chap. Obviously knows one or two things about the industry. But to be honest with you, I apologise to a friend of mine for stealing this off him, but I mean, they could have paid us £1,000 each and come round and asked us, we'd have given the same answers, to be honest.
Yes.
The worrying thing is that the upbeatedness seems mainly to come from the government's projections of attracting another 15,000 people to live on the island.
Right.
To create a 12-month-a-year industry for the hotels that he's hoping to attract.
And how will more people living in the island increase the hotels business, though? I mean, surely these people are going to be renting flats and things, aren't they, rather than staying in hotels?
Well, there will be money on them when they came over, firstly, and obviously there'd be all the extra construction that would have to take place.
Yeah.
More people just would create more, and they would also, presumably, if they bring in 15,000 people here, they'll be working in new industries here,
right,
and probably need more people to visit the island to see them at their workplace, or also to visit them as friends and family.
He seems to be saying that, you know, a lot of hoteliers are a bit sort of stuck in the ways and need to adopt new technologies and social networking and an online presence and things like that. Is that something that you've had to do?
Yes, certainly, yeah. We have our website. I use Twitter occasionally, Facebook much more. And I think most of the larger places are all using these media that he's said that we don't seem to be using.
Yeah.
We get people from all over the world. In fact, we got a fellow who checked in the other day and said the place is brilliant. He travels worldwide.
Right, good.
So I can't speak for all the accommodation, and presumably he'd be referring to a rather large place on the promenade in the middle of it when he says that there's been no reinvestment going on.
Well, yeah.
The Sefton, they spent a lot of money putting their atrium in when they... I know that's going back a little while now, but we're all spending money on our properties, and he does actually acknowledge that.
But, do you think it's nice, and I take what you're saying, that he's told you a lot of what you knew already, but do you think it's good maybe that for once people are being optimistic about the hotel trade, whereas normally it's a case of doom and gloom and tourism's finished? Well,
it depends on where you look at it. You can look at that and say that basically how deep you read the report. They're also saying that you've absolutely zero chance of selling. So anybody that's going to be coming out of the market will probably just run the place into the ground and that'll be gone.
Yeah.
So there are positive aspects to it, but they're fairly reliant on something different happening.
Mm. So that's what we're waiting for, really. That's the shining light of something different.
Yeah, some major investments on the island to give us more business traffic throughout the winter. He pretty much acknowledged that there wasn't a great deal of room to expand, or not a great deal of room, but He couldn't really offer any new ideas to bring people in on the shoulder seasons. And the winter, the dead of winter,
Yeah.
So that's where we're...
Well, that's the trouble, because people will get in touch with the programme, I'm sure, and say, what we want are more good quality hotels in the island, because come TT, you can't get a room anywhere. And that's probably true, but for 10 months of the year, I would think that, those hotels would be pretty empty.
Yeah, one of the other things he was quite upbeat about was if we... Apparently, most of our competitors, by this he means the likes of Jersey, Guernsey, Llandudno, they all have the budget hotels, the Premier Inn, etc. And he did actually say if they come, they will also bring part of their own people. They will actually generate some extra business.
I see.
But as far as I'm concerned, it will only be some extra business, and... basically, they'd be eating into that same pie that we've all got for the 12 months of the year.
Gotcha.
So it's a very difficult situation, that the whole thing. I just hope that the government can magic all this development and extra industry, but I'm not holding my breath.
All right. Good to hear from you for a change. Michael often sends us texts and emails, but it's nice to talk to him now and then. Thank you very much for calling today. Simon's been on via Facebook, and he says, tourism is a vitally important aspect of a sustainable island economy and ought to qualify for investment as much as any other industry that generates income and employment on the Isle of Man. Listening to your programme, as I do most days if I can, and as a non-island resident, I'd just like to say, in response to the previous contributor who stated holidays are a problem in the winter, as there's often a chance that visitors can be stranded due to bad weather. If that happened to me, I'd think I'd died and gone to heaven. I love the island. The perfect scenario would be sitting in the conservatory at the Empress Hotel with a large glass of white wine watching the weather. Best wishes to you all from a windy sandbatch in Cheshire. That's from Kath. Thank you, Kath. Nice to hear from you. I've mentioned this before, and some MHKs have said it's a good idea that needs investigating. There has to be a reason to come to the Isle of Man, and sports tourism is the way to go. In the winter, we could have all the indoor sports and fill a lot of hotels. In the summer, we have the outdoor sports. The Celtic Cup could be for all sports where teams come to compete for, say, golf with teams from all over the Celtic nations. We're the hub. All sports could put on a Celtic Cup of their own, backed by the government. Or is this too good an idea, says Chris22. No, sounds like a good enough idea to me, and I'm not into sport. Hey boy, is this so-called expert consultant's report on the hotel tourism industry just another put-up by old Gorney boy to get his 21 million Golden Gateway to the island? No, I don't think so. All too cosy and convenient, or is it? Facts and opinions from Frank. Did the guy say Mount Murray has been sold? Heard, read, seen now. Can you confirm, Stu? Yeah, according to the report, Mount Murray Hotel and Country Club just been sold, so will hopefully reopen later in 2016, according to the report. That's all I know about it, though. I wonder how much money was wasted on yet another consultation when absolutely nothing new is in the report that we already knew. The last thing we need is another 15,000 added to the population. Yes, it'll boost certain areas of work, but as we usually see, it doesn't benefit the local population as the huge influx of cheap labour close behind. That's from Kev. On this topic about hotels here on the island, top and bottom of it is that there are no tourists really anymore and nothing here, and who on earth is going to come in the winter? Okay. As a service provider, not I admit in hotels, but in self-catering, I know that there's business all year round because we found some. But, and this is the issue, and this is what I suspected, the cost of getting here. I have had 8 people this year who were inquiring, who changed their minds when they found out how much it would cost to get here. We promote through Airbnb, Welcome Cottages and other portals and find success comes through our own endeavours. We do feel that we're swimming against the tide. Now, it's not true to say that quality is lacking, but the support to be afloat all year round, feast or famine. Get that tunnel dug at the point, all year round trade, HGV at night, cars daytime, on drive, on electric rail. No booking cancellations, trade from the UK, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland. Yeah, tunnel, yeah, that's going to work.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays. Or you can share your thoughts anytime on the Facebook page as Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find details of what's up for debate each day on the programme. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's something you think we should be discussing on the programme, get it to us by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now. So until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.